Today, we're going to be doing a bit more in the story of Moses. I don't know whether anybody can think back to 3 weeks ago. Was it 3 weeks ago? I know it's a long time, you know, all kinds of things have happened in it since then. But 3 weeks ago, we did look at the fact that back in Egypt, can we have the... Yeah. All right, so that's the title of the sermon is about God's call to Moses. That's really what we're looking at today. But we're going to do a quick recap first. So the next slide, please, Dave. Yeah, so this is just reminding people who were here, or anybody who wasn't here, that, you know, the Israelites, which are the forerunners of what we call Jews today, the Israelites were slaves in Egypt, treated very, very harshly. They weren't just kind of like employees that can go home for lunch or, you know, have time off. They were whipped and beaten and treated terribly. Okay, next one. The king, called the Pharaoh, which is just the Egyptian word for king, he made a decree that all the male babies needed to be killed. Pretty awful stuff. And there was one little baby, Moses, whose mother didn't want him to die, understandably, and she made a little basket and put him amongst the reeds on the side of the river. And that basket was rescued by, does anyone remember who? Who was the woman who came and rescued that baby in the basket? What's that?
Pharaoh's daughter.
Pharaoh's daughter, thanks. So she was a princess. And she decided to take this baby home, so that's Moses. Moses therefore grew up as the grandson of the Egyptian king. Royal. That's how he grew up. But I think he must have always known, so I'm guessing she must have told him that actually he was really one of the Hebrews or the Israelites. Those two words are both used. And I'm thinking, how did he get to know his older brother Aaron and his, thank you, we need a good technical man here with strong muscles. Oh, great, thank you very much. And so how did he know that he had a big brother Aaron and he had a big sister Miriam? You were saying something?
Aaron was a younger brother.
Yeah, was he? I'm not sure. I thought he was older. I know he was a brother. He was always acts young because Moses becomes the leader. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure anyway. He had a brother, Aaron, and he certainly had an older sister, Miriam. And I think that somebody must have told him, and this princess must have told him, you really come from the Hebrew people. I'm wondering if she let him go back to mum and dad and brother and sister now and again, so I knew who he was connected with. Anyway, that's just my surmising. It doesn't tell us that, but he certainly knew that. Anyway, for various reasons, he had to escape because he was concerned about the injustice, the nasty treatment, which was a good thing, except that he got sufficiently angry that when he saw one Egyptian killing another Egyptian for no good reason, he killed him. He killed the one that was killing the one was killing the Hebrew, that's what it was. And he had to escape because Granddaddy Pharaoh would have come after him, grandson or not. You kill one of my people and you lose your life. And so there were a whole lot of people after Moses. They didn't worry too much about beating Hebrews or any of that sort of stuff, or even killing them. They didn't care about that. But killing an Egyptian, different story. So Moses ran away to Midian, next picture, and there he is. He meets up with some shepherd girls and helps them to get water for their sheep. And so they take him home to lunch to meet Daddy. And Daddy says, now he's a nice looking young man, let him stay here And then after a while, he gave one of his daughters to Moses as a wife. I hope she approved. It doesn't say. But, that's what happened. And they were in the land of Midian, which is on the other side of the desert. So that's the background to today's story. So Moses is now, he's come out of a world of Egyptian royalty, even though he's really a Hebrew. He's come out of a world of Egyptian royalty, and now he's being a shepherd, looking after sheep in this vast desert area of Midian, looking after his father-in-law's sheep. Right? So that's a big change in lifestyle. He's been a very educated man, and, God knows that's going to be useful at a certain point in time. But right now he's in the desert and he's probably thinking, well, what was all that for? Here I am. I'm going to look after sheep for the rest of my days. That's it. I am here. That's all I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then one day something happens. The next one, please. And you probably know this story, but I'm going to read it to you because I want you to listen to it fairly carefully. It's in Exodus chapter 3, and I'm going to read verses 1 to 10. Moses and the burning bush. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. So his father-in-law was a priest, but it wouldn't have been of the Hebrew religion, it would have been of another religion. And Moses led the flock to the far side of the desert, and he came to the mountain called Horeb, what's also called Mount Sinai. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. I'm not sure that Moses at this point, just making a comment, I'm not sure that Moses at this point knew who was calling him. He's probably looking around, is there anyone here? I didn't think there was anyone here. But he answers. And then God says in verse 5, do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Because, that they'd already been told that if you look at God, then you'll die. Don't try and look at God, don't try and work out what he looks like. The Lord said, verse 7, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land, into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me. And I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I'm sending you to Pharaoh. That's back home, back where he was. To bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Now by now, this is a different Pharaoh. So it's not the one that's granddaddy. This is another one, most likely related. I can't remember who the next one is. And the dates are all not exact anyway. We're not sure. So another Pharaoh who he probably knew when he was growing up. somebody who was probably the next generation down, like an uncle. That's probably who it was. An uncle. But, you know, Moses has run away because he's scared that they're going to kill him. And so he's got a few questions. Would you have questions? I think I'd have quite a few questions at this point. And what we're going to do now is look at the questions, because he has kind of 4 questions and then he makes a 5th one, which is not really a question but a statement. So we're going to look at Moses' questions. And but even before we do, I just wanted to draw a little parallel here. Moses must have been praying about his people. He must have been, because why would God be saying, I have indeed seen the misery of my people, I've heard them crying out, da 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 da. And so, and he's telling Moses this because he knows that Moses cares. Otherwise it makes no sense. Moses cares very deeply about his own Hebrew people. That's actually why he got into trouble and why he ended up killing the Egyptian, because the Egyptian was mistreating somebody from his own people for any reason. So Moses was actually angry about his own people being mistreated. And I think it's been on his heart. He can be far and far away in the desert tending sheep. But that doesn't stop him caring about the people that he's left behind in Egypt. His own people. He would have known a ton of Egyptians. But his own people were the ones who were crying out, struggling. And I think that this is something that Moses, well, he speaks to Moses' heart and says, okay, I've heard that cry. And actually Moses is one of the people. He is not one who has been mistreated by the Egyptians. He's grown up in royalty. But he's one of the people. So I am absolutely sure that the implication we can make is that he has been praying for his own people while he's out there with the sheep, but feeling absolutely helpless. Now, I remember when my grandmother was dying. I don't remember who I've told this story to. This is quite some time ago. My grandmother, I only had one grandmother, the others had died. And I actually liked my grandmother. It was my mother's mother. And Mum told me, says she's dying. She hasn't got long to live. And she doesn't understand anything that anyone says anymore. Because, you know, Mum goes in and wants the washing and wants to talk to her about the washing, you know, which night is and which, you know, all the rest of it. And Grandma is showing no signs of hearing or answering or anything. It's almost like she's very close to death. So Mum told me she is dying, she will die soon. And so I heard this. And I had been praying for 20 years for my grandmother every day, that she would be saved, that she would come to know God, because she wouldn't have a bar to do with God or anything. When I heard that she was close to death, I got down on my knees. Now, I don't generally get down on my knees very often. It's not something I grew up with. And I said to God, now listen here, God. When I say that, I mean this is the last time I'm saying this. God, you better listen, because I mean this and this, you know. I'm not going to say it again. So I said, listen here, God. I've been praying for Grandma every day for 20 years. There's been no action, and now she's about to die. So I'm asking you to send someone to her who will be able to speak to her the gospel, and that she will believe and that she will understand. I thought that was a pretty good prayer, don't you? I got up from my knees. I was very happy because I felt very confident that God's going to answer this prayer very, very soon. I even danced in the kitchen. There was no one to see me, but I was there, maybe little kids that we had at home. But, I was dancing in the kitchen because I was very, very confident that God was going to answer it. Then the phone rang again. It was my mother. She said, I'm paying for you to fly to Sydney tomorrow to see your grandmother. Now, that felt a bit like a lead balloon because I prayed for someone else to go to speak to Grandma. I'm the granddaughter, in the pecking order. I'm down here. And I knew that Grandma did not want to hear anything about God. However, I had prayed, hadn't I? And it's like I'd prayed, gone to God, and then what did he do? He brought an arrow straight back to me, and it made it very clear, okay, I'm sending you. Now, that was scary. It was really scary. Anyway, I dutifully got on the plane with our two youngest kids and left the two older ones at home with Stuart and went off to Sydney. The first day I went to see Grandma, I had a very clear message about forgiveness from God. I knew what that was about because my grandmother had abandoned her children, all of them. That's why my mother grew up in a children's home. So it was a big deal. Not many people knew about that. And when I went in to see my grandmother in the hospital, she immediately sat up, bolt upright, and she was perfectly alert and she could communicate normally, and it was as if she were not sick. And it turned out I had 15 minutes. And in that 15 minutes, I can't remember the exact words I said, but I did talk the message that God had given me. And, it shouldn't have been to my surprise, but it was to my surprise, that she took hold of it, she embraced it immediately with great joy. And, you sort of think, did she really get it? We had a week. She died a week later. Every day for that week. Grandma, when I went in, Grandma sat up, the same thing, bolt upright, and I could talk absolutely normally for about 15 minutes. And every single day God gave me a particular message for that day. And it became very, very, very clear that it was a true conversion. And she just soaked in everything that she could about God's love and salvation. Everything. This is a radical change for a woman who wouldn't have anything to do with God. And got to the age of about, I think she died when she was about 82. She died at Easter. And I felt it was a victorious Easter. She'd come. She'd moved. She was ready to go. And I was ready to release her. God did answer that prayer. But I did not expect that it would be that I would also have to make a move and take a risk to say something that under normal circumstances at other times would have made her angry. God was in that. And so I've got sympathy for Moses, wanting to ask a whole lot of questions. What would it be like going back to Egypt? What would it be like? Would they be likely to kill him? Would they accept him? What about even going to his fellow Israelites? What would they think of him? Let's see Moses' questions. And I'm just going to say now, from my experience and from reading through the rest of the Bible, it is okay to go ask God the questions that we need to ask. Okay, next one, please. Question number 1. Who am I that I should be the one to go? don't we always come back, if God calls us to do something or we suspect it, don't we often come back and say, God, but I can't do it. That's ridiculous. I'm not, you really mean me? Because I can think of a whole lot of other people who would be better qualified than I am, who would, have got all of these amazing gifts, and I don't have any of those. Do you mean me? But this is Moses. He'd be brought up in the royal palace. But, in this context, he's been out with the sheep for an awful long time. Who am I that I should go? Well, God's answer is over here. They didn't talk to him about his own gifts and whether he was qualified or whether he, liked Moses better than anyone else or what. He didn't even talk about that because it's irrelevant. That's what we think. But actually, if God's got the call, he's got the right to choose because he knows who he wants for the job. And sometimes people who've got all the gifts in the world are not going to be the ones to do the things that he wants you to do. Because in certain ways, you are the one that he wants. And it's not the others. So, God simply answered, I am who I am. That's a strange way to answer. I am. In other words, I should be enough, Moses. This is not about you. This is about me. That's what we've got to get our heads around. If God wants us to do something, it's his mission, and therefore it's about him. Because he can enable us to do it, just like he did with my grandmother. He was the one who made all the changes along the way for that to happen.
Yes.
And he reminded Moses, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. And that's what the Israelites kind of were looked back to. They remembered. They knew the stories of God working with Abraham, with Isaac and with Jacob, their ancestors, Moses' ancestors too. I'm that God. Think back, Moses, to what I've done in the past. I'm that same God. And our God is the same God who's worked in the past. It's about me, Moses. It's not about you. You simply have to go and do it. Second question. Now that's question 3. That's question 2, which is the one. And that's it. So I've got the questions 1 and 2 mixed up. I'm not sure about that. Question 1, who am I? God answers, I will be with you. It's the same point. It's about God. I will be with you. Now, there are different times when people in the Bible, Moses included and others, have said, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And God says, I will be with you. That is the strongest possible thing that God can say. I will be with you. It doesn't just mean a little bit of me. It doesn't just mean a bit of my big toe or, my finger or something like that. That's all I'm going to give you because I'm going to give the other bits to other people. No, if I am with you, we get the whole package that is God. God himself, all of him, will be with you, Moses, and that means with each of us. It's like Jesus said, I will be with you. Again, he just didn't offer a little bit of himself to Elaine up the back and a little bit of himself to Kathy here and, no. Because you can't split me up without killing me. You can't do that to Jesus and you can't do that to God. It's the whole package, whole of God. So he's saying, I will be with you, Moses. You will, and he gave him a sign. You and those people I'm asking you to lead, those Israelites, I'll give you a sign. You're all going to come back here to this mountain, Mount Sinai. And we know it. Those of us who know the story know that happened. Okay, question 2. Let me get it right now. It's a similar one. He says, who will I say sent me? Well, I mean, he knows full well it's God. But he wants to know, it's like if you're an ambassador or something, you want a letter or something from your king to the authority that you have to act. He wants that too because he's scared. And so what's the authority again? It's God. I am who I am, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. You can't get any more than that, Moses. Question 3. But what if they will not believe me? I can understand that. What if they will not believe me? That's when God says to Moses, what's in your hand? Moses said, okay, it's my stick. It's a shepherd's stick, the staff, which you use for, getting hold of a sheep and putting it back in the right place or warding off the enemy sheep, and dingoes and, well, they probably don't have dingoes there, but, wild animals. Or use it as a walking stick when you're going along. Your stick. Not very exciting. Well, Moses said, throw it on the ground. And he watches and it becomes a snake. Then God says, pick it up by the tail. Now, Graham and I disagree about this because my parents taught me you never, ever, ever, in Sydney, you never, ever, ever pick a snake up by its tail, otherwise its head can come round and bite you. Other people being taught that too? Yeah. Graham reckons he'd still pick a snake up by its tail. He's got courage. I reckon it's false courage, but anyway. But that's what God told Moses to do, and as he picked the snake up by its tail, it turned into the stick again. That was one sign. He said, okay, if people are not sure, then do that. And then, if they're still not sure, put your hand inside your cloak and then bring it out. He looked at his hand and he found that the hand he brought out had leprosy. It was as white as snow. Then God said, okay, put it back in your hand, in your cloak again, bring it out again, back to normal. It's kind of like little show and tell things, little tricks to help people to believe. So God had that covered. What about question 4? I wonder if there's one or two people who think this, but this is very much what I often think. Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words. I'm not a good talker, especially up front. I've never have been and I'm not now, even though you have spoken to me. I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Has anyone ever thought that? I have, and I still do. So how impressed was God by this one? Who made man's mouth, he says. I really like that answer. Puts Moses back in his place. Like, if I'm calling you, don't you think I know who you are? Don't you think I know what you can do with my help? Who made your ability to talk to be as it is, whether it's good or bad or whatever? God did. It's all going to come back to God, not about how good I am. And then God ends up by saying, go. I will help you to speak. Now, in the interest of time, I won't tell the next bit, but anyway, can we go to the last one? Well, not the last one, but this is Moses' request. After these 4 questions, he makes this statement. And it's, "O Lord, please send someone else." Do you know what that amounts to? no, won't go, God. Can't you imagine a little toddler saying that? Won't do it. And God's reaction, this is the only time this happens, is God gets angry. And that's not a good place to be. God's already given him these assurances. All of his other questions were fine. You can ask all the questions. I'm going to help you. And okay, if you want to know more about the kind of help I'm going to give you, I can tell you a bit about that now. But when he says no, that's it. Or so it seems. God is angry with Moses, but fortunately that's not the end of the story. Because as God could ask continue to speak, Moses rethinks. And the next one, Moses does go. He goes back to Egypt, gets his family, puts them on donkeys and things, and gets permission from his father-in-law, and he goes on the journey back to Egypt. And along the way, there's an angel that meets him, says, problem here, something's not done. And that is that the boy that he had by this time, Gershom, had not been circumcised, and that was required under Jewish law. If he's going to go back to talk to the Israelites, that means he is identifying not as an Egyptian, he's identifying as a Hebrew, his proper family. He needs to make sure that he fulfills his responsibility as a father to have his boy circumcised. So he does that. Well, at least he gets his wife to do it. She's not real keen on the idea. But then his brother Aaron turns up, meets him in the desert. How on earth they find out in the middle of the desert where they each are, but, God's involved in the story, so God can lead him. His brother Aaron turns up, and God says he's going to help you, Moses. Now, I must not leave it there, but the question is, has God called you to do anything? That's my first question. Your answer might be, I'm not sure. If the answer is, I'm not sure, then you've got the right to test it. There are several times when I haven't been sure, and I've said, God, I really want to know, I need to know, is this thing that's in my mind, is that from you? In which case, I know what the right answer is. Or is it my imagination? In which case I should say no. If I'm not sure, I've got the right and should pray for God to make it clearer which way you need to go. Was that from him? If there's information you need to know about how am I going to do it, or where am I going to do it, you've got the right to ask. You don't have the right to say no. Well, at least, let me say, it won't go well. Because God's the biggest one, and he wins in the end anyway. Let's go back to my question, has God called you? Okay, let's say you know that the answer is yes to do something. It may not be yet, maybe in 10 years' time or whatever. My second question is, have you done it? Have you done anything about it? Have you taken steps to find out how to do it? Because if you are actually acting like your answer is no, it's really not a good idea. It's much better to do whatever it is asking you to do if it's something you need to do, like now or as soon as possible. That's all. But God's call will never leave us in a lurch. And I can say that after various calls in my life to do various things. God has never left me in a lurch. He has always fulfilled the promises that have come with the call. Always. Some of the things I've had to wait for years, but they've all been fulfilled to the letter. Stuart knows about those more than anybody else here. You can trust him.